Uh, First of all, I'd like to thank everybody there and Ian in particular, for inviting me to this conference. Ian and I are friends. I think I'm friends of the conference, and I'd like to give a special shout out to Charlie Allen for managing the Justices Union's parliamentary group, which for many years has facilitated good relations between trades unions, including Napo, and Labour and other members of Parliament, so that we are well informed about what's happening in the criminal justice sector. It's great to be here at this conference, and I'm going to take this as an opportunity to champion the work you do in communities and in prisons, and changing lives and protecting the public. It's a particular pleasure for me to be here as a government minister for the first time. And I'm sorry I'm not there in person. So what I want to do is start by thanking Napo for the representative work you do for both probation and family court staff. And I'm grateful, and the government is grateful, even though what you may tell us won't always be easy for us to hear. It's only through your experience and expertise that we in Westminster can understand what's really happening, and so that we can react accordingly. I also want to pay particular tribute to our probation staff for their efforts over the last few months, something your senior leaders have continually impressed on us since we took office. So thank you. I'm very much aware, as is the Justice Secretary, that measures we put in place to manage the prison capacity crisis have put significant pressure on your workload. Increasing the time many offenders spend on license in the community from 50 to 60% in particular has been extremely demanding on your members. But it's only down to the heroic efforts of probation staff that we've been able to manage this crisis. Without you, it simply wouldn't have worked. And without this policy, our justice system would have fallen over, with police unable to make arrests and courts unable to hold trials. It could have meant the collapse of law and order in the country. And it's only with your continued dedication and resolve that we will. I know this continues to stretch you further when you are already being stretched so thin. But let me be clear, this is the very last thing we wanted to do. We were left with no choice thanks to the inaction of the last government. They knew that they had brought the prisons to the point of collapse. They knew that without an early release program, our prisons would overflow. The result, as they were warned, would have been disastrous. This government wasn't prepared to gamble. This government isn't prepared to gamble with public safety, and we believed inaction wasn't an option. And this summer's disorder, the appalling disorder, brought home just how precarious the situation was. We took swift action to bring those responsible to justice. We believe that was the right thing to do, but in doing so, we came dangerously close to running out of space entirely. It is no exaggeration to say that we were one bad day from disaster. That's why it's so important that you bear with us while SDS 40 continues to be rolled out. This approach is a far more transparent, sure-footed way to manage people in the community when compared to what came before. The last government introduced the end of custody license scheme, sometimes seeing offenders released into the community with no warning at all. Our approach had to be fast because it was time limited, but we made as much time as we possibly could so you could do the real hard work of preparing a release plan for every offender and working with them as they enter the community, encouraging them to turn their back on a life of crime. Make no mistake, we are well aware that we are still relying on you and your fortitude to see this through, and we are grateful to you. You will enable us to do what needs to be done to make sure that we never get into this position again, to bring real and much needed reform. We want to rebuild the criminal justice system and with it bring forward a longer term sustainable solution for the prison and probation service. That includes accelerating the prison building programme to make sure we have the cells we need, and we'll soon publish our 10-year capacity strategy, setting out how we will acquire new land for prisons and reform the planning process. And as you will be aware, the government has committed to carrying out a sentencing review, one which makes sure that we both protect the public and reduce reoffending. We're looking forward to saying more about the scope of this, the chair, the terms of reference of the review shortly, and want Napo to play its full part in this process. I also want to touch on the wider issues affecting probation. The probation services is at the very forefront of our efforts to reduce reoffending. Day in, day out, you make a huge contribution to the safety of this country. And it's important to say that despite the circumstances which inevitably create headlines, the data clearly shows that probation failures are rare. While we must learn from our mistakes, and I know that you, of course, take this seriously, put simply, you get a lot more right than it ever is got wrong. I've worked with many probation officers in my time as a magistrate in London, and I've no doubt many of you see your work as a vocation to turn lives around for the good of the British public. You are hardworking, dedicated, and always look for interventions that will make the most difference to the people you work with. But I'm conscious that this sense of vocation must never be taken for granted or exploited. That means getting working conditions right. I know that my colleagues, the Justice Secretary, and my colleague, Lord Timpson, James Timpson, who's the Probation Minister, both take this incredibly seriously. We are committed to working with your senior leaders, with Amy Rees, with Kim Thornton-Edwards, and with Phil Coppell, and we are encouraged by the constructive engagement already taking place with Napo and other recognised trades unions. Health and safety matters. You should be able to do your jobs of turning lives around without looking over your shoulder, because no one comes to work each day to be assaulted. But of course, pay matters as well. And it's right that you are paid fairly for the vital role you do. We agreed an additional pay deal this summer in recognition of everything that your members are doing to help the capacity situation. And also we're looking at the workload. We want to see manageable caseloads, because when they become overwhelming, everyone suffers. You don't get the time and space to really get to know the people you work with or tailor interventions as you would want to do. And the risk of burnout is all too real. And it means that people you work with don't get the support they need to turn their backs on crime. And that, of course, makes the public less safe. So well-being isn't something to be paid lip service to. I know stress and sickness is a problem, and we want to support you to get the balance right. It's why the Justice Secretary announced in July that we would recruit at least 1,000 new trainee probation officers by March next year. But we also want to make sure that we have the right blend of experience. That means supporting seasoned officers to stay in the job for longer, and I know the probation service is looking closely at how we can make sure that happens. I want to say a few words about family justice, and I'm talking as a family magistrate, former family magistrate. As you will be aware, Kafkas is a separate employer from the MOJ, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on specific issues that may arise between you. That being said, as a minister responsible for family justice, I'm very much alive to the vital role Napo members play in the family courts. And it was only yesterday that I met Jackie Tiotto, and no, it was on Wednesday that I met Jackie Tiotto, and she spoke forcibly, as you might imagine, about the recruitment issues which Kafkas are facing. Your work makes a difference to the lives of more than 130,000 children every year. And the government is very grateful, particularly given the immense pressure the system has experienced in recent years. From keeping the system moving during COVID to supporting the courts as we work together to clear the backlogs that were exacerbated by it. You've never failed, and the system did keep working, which is something which I think we should all be proud of. And you've done so while working to the most exceptional standards, as recognised by Ofsted in April this year. So thank you. As I come to a close, let me reiterate, Napo's views are critical as we rebuild and reform the justice system. The government is committed to working with you and partners across the system to address the capacity crisis, tackle delays, and reduce outstanding caseloads both in public and private law. Thank you for all you do and all you will continue to do. The government and the wider public owes you a debt of gratitude. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.